So this is my name. I'm a Russian citizen living in Estonia for the last 3 years. And this is about Narva and Ivangorod. This, sorry. So I figured out how to use this red dot. This is Estonia.
See everything here.
I know, but I have to show. I like red dots.
Okay.
Estonia, Russia. I'll start with the history. I think it's important, and as I see, we have a lot of connections in here again. So this is where Narva is, Estonia, Russia, and as some people think that Narva might be identified as a border city of the border country, and I don't know, Estonia is kinda where Europe starts, they usually identify, and Portugal where it ends. So this is, anyway, the border of Europe where it starts. Basically, it's two castles that's just confronting each other. This is Estonia, this is Russia. And what we have in here is a river and a bridge. Basics. I made this, I don't know what is this, but like infographics how I understand, so I'm not gonna bother you with details. So I made this to, like, so we see the bigger picture, what was happening for the 700 years. So this is the river, this is the Narva, and basically it's been always between Russia in all its forms, like Russian Empire, Russian Tsarist era, whatever. And those guys, like Denmark, Sweden, Livonia, they've been like hanging out in here and confronting Russia and at the same time trading, like, so it's like, it was okay for them. Constant wars and also trading. What I would like to mention is, I will go to this later, but this is Narva, this is river, this is Gulf of Finland, and this area I drew it myself, so because there's no maps of this. This is non-existent, recently Ingria area that could be in here if not some following things that happened. They had their own language and they had their own culture. I will go to this later. And then what happened? Estonia, Estonia declares their independence, and after that what happens for the next 30 years. And in terms of Narva, we have a missing picture in here. Yeah. So that's what happened to Narva. It's been demolished to the ground during the Second World War. And nothing left. And here I just could show this is Narva, and you can see this was a kind of big city, and this is Ivangorod, which is basically a fortress. Like people live just inside in here. And here's a quite big city. After these events, so this Narva became a Soviet Union, and they did not restore the city. They just built a typical Russian Soviet city, which you can see like all across Russia. Nothing special about this. And for those who doesn't know what Khrushchevki is those ugly guys, and they've just been a city, and that's what they did. They just built a typical buildings, like they didn't bother themselves to restore this medieval city. And during the Soviet era, Ivangorod, finally with Narva, became as one city. There's no border, the bridge is the border. Bridge friendship in here. Check. So yeah, they kept their own names. It's still Ivangorod and Narva, but people live and consider this as a one city. They see no difference. And who are those people actually? Because what happened during the World War, then we all know there is repressions, deportations. So no Estonians, Swedish, Finnish, no one left. So here we have people who they just brought from around, all across the Soviet Union. They just brought them to work on this place. So I need to stop in here because it's like a little bit aside of Narva have been this Greenholm manufacturer. It's been actually founded by a German businessman, and it's like a city within a city because it was a huge thing to Narva. It's a little bit aside, but it's been this waterfall's been used as a power for centuries. So that's why he built it in Narva. This German guy, and after Soviet Union collapsed, it's been abandoned. So and also after the collapse of Soviet Union, many of Russians left and many of people left, and city became a little bit like empty. So they didn't manage to run such huge manufacture. And it's not open to public, but it's, for example, it's open for tours, for example, Narva Opera Days, for raves sometimes. So, but it's too huge to use on a daily basis. And here is the most interesting place in Narva, where I came from. It's Narva Art Residence. The building is the house of director of Greenholm manufacture, so it's really beautiful, exceptional architecture. It's really big inside, so artists, like several artists at one time could live there. It's always exhibitions, parties, and it's with Narva Art Residence, they bring in attention to Narva from Tallinn, from Finland, for example, from Sweden, because for the last 30 years, Narva was like a black spot for Estonia. People were not integrated to Estonia because of the majority of population is Russian. So that's quite interesting view from above. This is Narva. Yeah, that's Narva. That's Ivangorod. This is the river. This is the bridge. So yes, and again, it became the border, and the majority of population is Russian. But here I would stop with this ugly picture, but it actually shows what I wanted to show. When I mentioned this Ingria area, and when we talk about, when we see this bigger picture with Russians and Estonians, for example, what we are missing is that actually so many smaller minorities been living in this area, and no one knows their names, but they had their own identity, traditions, language. And here's the area. So here is Narva, if you don't understand. Somewhere here is St. Petersburg, and here is Karelia. So those are lists of people who've been living, and they, with Soviet Union, they lost their identity because they became Russians. And this just could be an Ingria area, for example, another republic. And that's what might happen for Estonians also if Soviet Union wouldn't collapse. So Narva, it's border from view from above. This is border crossing, and it's a shrinking population city, so no proper jobs or stuff like that. Yes, and still a lot of families who separated by this border, and people still crossing this border every day. Probably not now, less and less, but for example, before pandemic, they've been crossing this every day on a daily basis for jobs. Narva was a candidate for a capital of European Union. It was a huge step for Narva could be, but lost to Tartu, which is fair. Tartu is a really great city in the middle of Estonia. And I hope they will collaborate somehow to bring attention to Narva. And these days, Narva is more visible for Estonia. It's a quite important city for Estonia, even though it's not big a city. It's bringing more and more attention. And now I should show you how it looks like. What's the difference between Narva and Ivangorod, for example? This is the entrance to Estonia from Russian side. So you can this is just, they just don't care at all. It's an international border, and it literally looks like this. This is the way, this is the road for pedestrians, and this is for the cars. And that's what you see. And people making a lot of jokes how the difference is so noble. So it's even, you can't even believe how different are those borders. To my feelings, it's like when I go from Estonia to Russian side, it feels like I go to jail. It's so ugly. I can't believe. Why can't you use a little amount of money to do at least something, you know? And this is how Estonian side looks. And people been sharing their feelings about how pandemics goes for them, how COVID goes. So what I noticed during the pandemic, that Estonians just took a chance and they did so many renovation. I saw it from the street. You can see the bridge, they renovated something, rebuilt something. And after 3 years, I go to Russia. What do you think? They did nothing. The border was closed for a year. They didn't even put locks on the toilets. And so this is from, there's another bridge from Krinholm factory, which is a huge territory, to Ivangorod. And also it's abandoned for years, and it looks like this. It was a pedestrian bridge for Krinholm workers that's been going from work to home. Some boring views. So this is me, this is what I do, this is what I did when I came to Narva. I started to explore, and I'm kind of photographer, one of my personalities. So I started to run this account, and it's so easy to be noticed in Estonia, and so many people started noticing me, and I had a couple of exhibitions, because my view on Narva, it turns out, it's not just pictures of Narva. That's my personal research, what Narva could be if it's ruined, literally boring city where there's nothing to do. And this is how this looks, this example. And what I wanted to show you, it's a flag of Narva, which could be misunderstood with Ukrainian. So people see no difference usually. I checked on them. So when the war started, the whole Estonia is in Ukrainian flags, and in Narva there was no, because we already have one. No one cares. Yeah, so this is what happens on the Russian border. It's a kind of life in all its forms. So this is how my account looks like, if you're interested. And this is the last part. What 3 years in Narva art residence been taking this reconfiguring territories that's actually close to this Transbordering Laboratory. I think we've been doing something close to what happens in here. And it's run by Finnish Institute, which is building strong connections with Estonia and bringing attention to Narva. And you can check on this website. It's a lot of information, pictures. So many people were coming from Europe, and it's the only, I will show you only lists some of the questions that we've been working on and trying to understand what Narva is and what's the future of Narva and what kind of people we could bring, what could we do. And I guess this is it. Actually, exactly this weekend, we're having a final festival of our work with reconfiguring territories, but somehow I chose to be here, not with them, because I decided I might bring this out to the world, not only sitting in our Scandinavian area. Yes, it was a 3 years project that's been finished this year. But we're actually thinking that we might continue with something else close to this. So we've been working on this reconfiguring territories a lot. I mean, I was just a participator. I'm not who's organized. It's not who's organized it. I was just a participator from Narva, and I was the only one who was from Narva, so I can actually take the knowledge and use it somehow, because all others just left to their countries. Thank you.